Sadhuveshaya Shishya Chitta Vilasine Vidita Kila Vedyaya Moksha Vigna Vighatine Saumya Kashi Nivasaya Deshikaya Viragine Chaitanyananda Rupaya Jivan Muktaya Mangalam Om Shanti 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 Om Freedom 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 Om Bolo Shri Sadgurudev Swami Shivananda Maharaj Ki Jai Shri Sadgurudev Swami Shivananda Maharaj Ki Jai Om Namah Shivaya. Good afternoon. Yesterday, at the end of the class, we had a little discussion and we didn't quite finish. So I want to continue it today. Anybody remembers what was it? Luckily, I remember. Yeah. Yeah, but before we go into that, I will just go again to section 11 that we started yesterday. Okay? Tejo vavadbhyo bhuyah tadva etadvayum agrihya kasham abhitapati tad ahuhu nishochati nitapati varshayishyati va iti Teja eva tat purvam darshayitva atha pasrijate tade tadurdhva bhischa tiraschi bhischa vidyudbhihi ahradascharanti tasmat ahuhu vidyotate stanayati varshayishyati vaiti Teja eva tat purvam darshayitva atha pasrijate teja upasveti. Quickly I will go to the translation that we already seen yesterday. Indeed, there is something superior to tejas, to fire. This is what Sanat Kumara is telling Narada. Says there is indeed something superior to fire. And, there is something superior to water. Right? We were in water before, and now he says fire is definitely superior to water. And now we explain why, and he gives two explanations. The first one, Tadva etad vayum agriya akasham abhitapati. With the help of vayu, with the help of air, fire, in the form of the sun, is hitting the sky, hitting akasha. Okay? And then tadahuhu nishochati nitapati varshayishvati vaiti. Then people say, it is very hot, it is burning, it is going to rain. Remember? Yesterday we already mentioned it. That shows that before the rain comes the heat, fire precedes water, and therefore in this sense it is superior. Then he says, Teja eva tat purvam darshayitva atha pasrijate. We see that first the teja, the fire is coming, and only then water manifests in the form of rain. Therefore, it is superior. Now he gives a second reason. Tad etad urdhva bhihischa tiratishchi bhischa vidyudbhihi ahradascharanti tasmat ahuhu vidyotate stanayati Varshishyati vaiti. He says, we see the light of the lightning coming in zigzag. He says down and sidewise. He's coming in zigzag, the light of the lightning. And then after that, people say, lightning is coming, now there will come that before first the thunder. Ahrayati, there will be a thunder, and then they say it is going to rain, right? And therefore we see that even here the fire in the form of lightning precedes the water of the rain. Okay? Therefore he says again, Teja evatat purvam darshayitva ata apasrijate. First comes the fire and only then comes the water. Therefore he says Teja upasveti, you should worship Tejas, you should worship fire. Okay? This was the mantra, and we went on a different discussion about the transformation quality of fire. Fire is about transformation, and I told you that Brahman has no transformation in it. He is changeless, he is immutable. Okay? And at the end of the class, we discussed about consciousness as being one, and not many consciousnesses. You remember? I told you that there is only one consciousness, but then we had a difficult question. If that is so, why I feel my consciousness here, and you feel your consciousness there, and she feels her consciousness over there, etc., etc. If consciousness was one, I should have been able at least to know what you're thinking now, right? Because it is the same consciousness that is perceiving these thoughts and your thoughts. If consciousness was one, I should have known anything happening everywhere, because consciousness is all pervading. Right? So how can you tell that consciousness is one? In order to answer this question, we will use an example. We will use an analogy. Person is walking in the street with a big mirror, and suddenly he stumbles and the mirror falls to the ground and breaks 2,000 pieces. The whole area is spread with lots of small pieces of glass, pieces of mirrors. Then a child is looking, and he is seeing in many of these pieces, he sees the sun reflected. Right? He looks and he says, hey, mommy, look how many suns are there on the road. Right? What he sees is an exact replica of the sun. It has the same color, the same shape, it brings light. Everything seems to be similar with all these suns that appear in these small mirrors. Right? But the mother says, no, this is not the sun. The sun is only there. There's only one sun, not many suns. But this one sun is being reflected in many, many small mirrors. In the same way, we say consciousness is one. There is no plural for consciousnesses, because consciousness alone exists, and that alone exists. There is nothing else. And if there were two consciousnesses, then it cannot be, it couldn't be all-pervading, because one will limit the other. Okay? But this one consciousness is being reflected like small pieces of mirrors that reflect the sun. In a similar way, every mind of each and every one of us is small mirrors that reflects consciousness, reflects the light of consciousness. Consciousness is like a light. But this light is being reflected in the intellect. Particularly when we talk about the reflection, we talk about the intellect within the mind. Now, we are like this small child who is not able to discriminate between the real sun and the sun in the mirror. We look and see many people and we think that each one is a separate consciousness, because we see a reflection of consciousness. Is it not? When we look at another person, we can see the light of consciousness shines from that person. What is the difference between a stone and a person? I mean, despite it is made of a different matter, etc. But the striking difference is that a person is conscious and the stone is inert. Right? Everybody knows it. So we see consciousness and we associate it with the person. What is the person? With the mind and the body of that person. And we think that consciousness is part of what we call a personality, is part of what we call an individual. Vedanta says this is not true. This is not the case. Consciousness is not part of the individual. Consciousness is not a product of the physical body, is not a product of the mind. Scientists will tell you that consciousness is the product of the physical body. Buddhists will tell you that consciousness is the product of the mind. But Vedanta says it is neither. It is neither. Consciousness has nothing to do with the body and the mind, but it is reflected in the mind. Just as the sun is reflected in many, many small mirrors. Okay? So, if consciousness is one, then the same consciousness should appear in the same way in everybody. Right? But somebody is bright, somebody is not so bright, somebody is kind, somebody is unkind. All these things appear to be related to consciousness. Is it not? How can you say that consciousness is one and the same? Again, we go to the example and we say, okay, some of these small pieces of mirrors are covered with dust. They fall on the side of the road and they're covered with dust. So the sun, which is reflected through them, appears to be a little dim. It's not very clear. Some pieces, they are a little distorted. They are a little distorted, and the sun, you know, if the mirror is a little distorted, the sun appears to be either very big or very small or in different shape, not anymore round. Right? Now, all these changes that we see in the reflections, do they affect in any way the sun? No. They have nothing to do with the sun. They are just reflections of the sun. The sun is there in the sky, unconcerned with the reflections in the mirrors. In the same way, our minds are different from one another. One mind is covered with dust. One mind is distorted. One mind is clear. One mind is very pure. One mind is full of impurities. Therefore, the consciousness which is reflected from them appears to be different. But in reality, consciousness has nothing to do with that. Consciousness is like the underground reality that underlies everything. And within this consciousness, there are so many appearances. In some appearances, the existence of consciousness is completely veiled. We are not able to see it. So we call these objects inert. Is there consciousness in a stone? We cannot see any signs of consciousness. It is just lying there. But Vedanta says, no, there is no stone here. It is just consciousness. Because there is nothing else but consciousness. But this stone is an appearance within consciousness, and this appearance is covering completely the nature of consciousness. Therefore, it appears to be inert. And when you look at an animal, you see already much clearer the appearance of consciousness. So it is not that there is more consciousness in the animal than there is consciousness in the stone, because consciousness is one, is undivided, is equal. There is no such a thing of grades of consciousness. But there is different level of manifestation of consciousness. In the animal, there is much clearer manifestation. It is like a mirror that is much more clear and true to the things she reflects. Okay? Whether in the stone, it is like a mirror that is completely covered with mud. You cannot see the consciousness at all. You cannot see the sun at all. When we go to human beings, consciousness is already much more revealed. Okay, it's the same consciousness, it is one only, but this time it is much more revealed, it is much more apparent, you are able to recognize it much easier. And when you go to the saints, this is the highest manifestation that we can find of consciousness. Consciousness is so evident and vibrant. These are like mirrors which are spotless clean and completely flat. They give a perfect reflection. This is why we want to make the mind very sattvic. What is a sattvic mind? A sattvic mind is like a perfect mirror. And in the scriptures, we find it in the Viveka-Chudamani, for example, we learn that only when the mind becomes completely sattvic, completely pure, then there is a chance for realization. Because as we mentioned yesterday, and we didn't elaborate, since bondage is in the mind and not in the self, since bondage is in the mind only and not in the self itself, it's not in consciousness. Consciousness is not bound. You see, the sun appears to be bound in the mirror that reflects it. Truly, the sun is not affected, is never bound. But it appears to be enclosed or bound by this little mirror. Shankaracharya says in the Viveka-Chudamani, since bondage is in the mind only, liberation is only in the mind only. There is no liberation in the self. Why there is no liberation in the self? Because the self is never bound. Something which is never bound doesn't need to be liberated. This is something that we need to think about. Because normally people say, what do you want? I want to realize the self. I want to know myself. Where is the bondage? Bondage is in the mind. So where is the liberation? Liberation is also in the mind. And what is the liberation of the mind? When the mind becomes completely pure, very clear reflection of consciousness, then there is a chance for realization to take place. Then realization can appear. The mind itself ceases completely to become a barrier that distorts and veils in any way the light of consciousness. And this is what liberation is about. Okay? So this is a little bit about this. It is just food for thought. We need to hear more and more about it in order to appreciate, because it is usually very different than what we are used to think about our life. It just turns everything topsy-turvy, upside down. Normally we used to think that the world is there, regardless of us. It is independent of us, and we are coming into this world. We live for some time and we go away. But this model is saying it is just the opposite. You are the only thing which is true and real. And the whole world can manifest only once you as consciousness exist. Once consciousness is, the world can manifest. But the world has no existence apart of consciousness. Okay, so we continue now. Sayaha tejo brahmeti upaste tejasvi vaisa tejasvato lokan bhasvato appahatamaskan abhisidhyati yavat tejaso gatam tatra sayata kamacharo bhavati yastejo brahmeti upaste asti bhagavo tejo bhuya iti tejaso vava bhuyo asti iti tanme bhagavad bravitu iti ekadasha khandaha. This is the end of the 11th section. Sayaha tejo brahmeti upaste. That person who worships Brahman as Tejas, as fire, what happens to him? Tejasvi vaisa tejasvato lokan bhasvato apahatamaskan abhisidhyati. Such a person, being tejasvin, being full of light, full of tejas, being illumined, such a person, abhisidhyati, attains lokan, the world, which are tejasvataha, which are shining and or bright. Tejasvataha, bright. And they are also bhasvataha, they are also shining. And they are also appahatamaskan, which means they have no slight darkness in them. He attains to worlds which are completely free of any darkness. I don't know how he can sleep there, but but probably it's a good thing. Yeah, actually, the idea here is that such a person becomes full of light. His experiences are full of light, and this is kind of joy and brightness and enlightenment, which is filling his life either here or anywhere else. Okay? And again, he says, like always before, Yavade tejaso gatam tatra sayata kamacharo bhavati. As far as Tejas can go, that far he can go according to his wish. Who? Yaha tejo brahmeti upaste. That person who worships Brahman as Tejas. Again, Narada is asking, Asti bhagavas tejo bhuyaiti? Sir, is there anything which is higher than Tejas? Tejas vava bhuya asti iti. Definitely there is something which is higher than Tejas. Tanme bhagavan bravitu iti. Please, sir, tell me what is that. And now we go to the 12th section, and we learn what is higher than Tejas. Akasho bhava tejaso bhuyan. Akashe vai suryas chandramasau ubhau vidyut nakshatrani agnihi akashena ahvayati akashena shrinoti akashena pratishrinoti akashe ramate akashena ramate akashe jayate akashamabhijayate akashamupasveti. The next level is akasha. Right? We are going to another element. We have already water and fire, and now we are going to akasha, space. Akasha means space. And it says definitely akasha is superior to fire. Why? Akashe vai surya chandra masau ubhau I'm trying to find. Yeah. Okay. Surya chandra masau ubhau vidyut nakshatrani agnihi akashena ahvayati akashena shrinoti. So he says that the sun and the moon, they are all within akasha. Akashena, it is the sun and the moon are placed within space. Is it not? The sun and the moon need some space in order to exist. So the sun was before the expression of tejas, of fire. Now fire itself in the form of the sun is included within Akasha, and therefore Akasha is more extensive. It is more all-pervading. Not only we find the Surya, Chandra, Masa, Ubha. Ubha means both of them, the sun and the moon. Also Vidyut, the lightning, and Nakshatrani. Nakshatrani means the planets. They are also within space. And Agnihi, fire. So we find all the different forms of tejas are included within space. They cannot exist without space, and therefore space is superior. Therefore he says, Akashena Shrinoti. By Akasha, by space, a person can hear. Here we have to understand a little bit about the evolution of Prakriti, the five senses, etc. I mentioned it already once in the beginning of our course, but I will mention it again. We have the five elements. Akasha is space, Vayu is air, right? And we have Agni is fire, and Apas is water, and Prithvi is earth. Each one of them is connected to different sense. Okay? So Akasha, space, is connected to the sense of hearing. According to this cosmology, hearing happens to the medium of space. We know today in science that it is actually a little more connected to air, because it is vibration within air, but still we can understand that space is important for the sense of hearing. And then we have the element of air is associated with the sense of touch, right? Also we can imagine that the wind is blowing and we feel it on our skin. This is the connection between the element of air and the sense of touch. And then we have fire. The element of fire is associated with the sense of sight. Right? Fire you can see from very, very far. Right? It is very bright, easy to see. So, and also it gives light so you can see other objects. So fire is associated with the sense of sight. And then water is associated with taste. Okay, we cannot taste the food, things which are completely dry, and if our mouth is completely dry, even though it is in our mouth, we don't feel the taste. We need the saliva, we need the water from the food in order to really feel the taste. Therefore, water is associated with the sense of taste. And finally, Prithvi, or earth, is associated with smell. Okay, people say, just think about the smell of the earth after the first rain. Okay, after the rain, there is a very special smell of the earth. This is kind of the connection between these. So here he says, Akashena Shrinoti. Through Akasha, a person can hear. Because Akasha, the space, is the medium that allows hearing. And also he says, Akashena Prati Shrinoti. Through Akasha, not only you can hear so many things, you can hear also other people when they speak to you. Prati Shrinoti. Prati means in all directions. Akashe Ramate, Akashe Naramate. He says, within space a person rejoices, and within space a person also suffers. or is not rejoicing. In other words, all our experiences are also taking place within space. We can see that space is much more vast and much more expanding than we have seen in fire. Actually, the element of space, it is actually not element in the sense it is not material. It is element in the sense of a principle. Akasha, or space, is the first evolute within the five elements. You know, there is a process of the evolution of Prakriti, how the world evolves according to Vedanta. And after the mind is created, then the five elements starts to come. The first element that manifests is Akasha, space. You need space for everything else. And therefore, Akasha is the nearest among all the different elements to the self, to consciousness, to the source, to Brahman, to ultimate reality. Is the nearest. And therefore, it resembles it more than the others. The space is that which is infinite, which is vast. And infinity is one of the main characteristics of Brahman. Brahman is not finite, is infinite. Therefore, a lot of the examples that explain about Brahman are using the analogy of space. For example, we have the analogy of the Ghata Akasha, the space within a pot. Imagine a pot made of clay. This is a very, very classical example in Vedanta. A pot is made of clay, but inside there is space. Okay? So we say there is the pot space, right? We call it a pot space. We can do this example with our famous cup here. There is a space within this cup, and there is space outside this cup. Is it not? So how many spaces we have here right now? We have two spaces, right? There is inner space. Now my finger is inside the cup or outside? You cannot deny it is inside. Now it is outside. So we have two different spaces, right? There is inner space and outer space. Now tell me, what happened to space? Did they move space? Yes? Did the space move? What do you think? Think about how ridiculous, how can you move space? You move the cup, but what happened to the space? That the space moved along with the cup? Or it is another space? So if you say that the same space moved, it doesn't make any sense, right? I took my space and walked back home. What does it mean? Right? And also if I say, no, the space left there, but I moved the cup. So what you say, now when you move it, you united the inner space with the outer space, because that which the inner space before now becomes the outer space, and that which was the outer space now becomes the inner space. Right? Does that make any sense? No. Right? We see we have a very serious problem here. Did you ever think about it? You cannot, you try to analyze what is this inner space and outer space, and ultimately you realize there is no really distinction. There is no such thing as inner space, outer space. There is only one space. There is only one space. And this limitation, how do we call it in Sanskrit? Upadhi. This is the meaning, this is the classical explanation of upadhi. This limitation, which we call the cup, that makes it inner space and outer space, is not really dividing space. It just creates the appearance. Actually, it is space that is holding the cup. It is not cup that is holding the space. You see that? It is space itself which is holding, supporting the cup. If there was no space, the cup cannot exist. It is not the cup that is holding the space. So this limitation of space that create the division between inner space and outer space is an illusion. There is no division in space. Space is one and is undivided. You can never divide space. So when you say the space in this room and the space in the other room, actually there are not two spaces. There is one uninterrupted, undivided space. But the division happens in the appearances, which we call the room. The changes or the limitations are connected with the limiting adjuncts, we call them in philosophy. Those things that create the appearance of the limitation, the appearance happen within the changes, and the limitations are connected with them and not with the space. Therefore, space is undivided. Is one, is all-pervading, and it is undivided. Just like Brahman. Right? This is a very good example for Brahman. For the absolute, Brahman means the absolute reality, the absolute truth. And ultimately, we say that Brahman is of the nature of consciousness also. That consciousness which is myself, which we talked about in the beginning of this class, that all-pervading consciousness which is one, is also called Brahman, the absolute, the ground of all being. And in a sense, it is very similar to space, because it is all-pervading and it is undivided. So here, there is one cup that appears to limit consciousness into this. And right there, there is another cup, or whatever you call it, a physical body and mind, that appear to create another division of consciousness. And here there is another division of consciousness, and each individual here in this room appears to create a division of consciousness. But consciousness is undivided. There is only one consciousness. It only appears to be divided, just as we discussed about the space. You cannot divide space. It is one, it is all-pervading. You cannot divide consciousness. It is one, it is undivided. It is all-pervading. There is one consciousness, and that consciousness is all-pervading. And actually, as we have already mentioned, that consciousness is the only thing that exists. Nothing else exists. If you take the whole space as a unit, the whole universe, the space, the total space as a unit, it includes everything. And everything inside this universe is just apparent limitations, apparent modifications of that space. But actually it is all one space. So you can see that Akasha is a very, very good analogy for Brahman, for absolute reality, for the truth. Therefore, Sanat Kumara is telling Narada that Akasha is superior to Tejas. Now, somebody asked me the other day, is all these stages that we are discussing, is it something that people need to go through? Do you need to first do the sadhana of the name, then the sadhana of the speech, the sadhana of the mind, and all this in order to reach? No. This is just a style of the Vedas that they reveal the truth in stages. And in each stage we can learn something new, as we have seen. In each stage we had a discussion and we were able to understand another aspect of reality, of the truth. You see, I could just cut the whole discussion and just tell you what is the final conclusion. Will it help you? Will it make you understand the nature of reality? No. Because this is not the point. It is not that we have to reach to know the last one and then we know the truth and that's it. No. These stages are just, this is the style of the Vedas, one style of the Vedas, to take us through the different aspects. Each one of them contributes something for our understanding and something for our realization of the truth. And when we study all of them, we get kind of a picture, at least intellectual picture, that can help us. And you know, intellectual understanding in Vedanta is very important. Not in every path of yoga, intellectual understanding is important, is necessary. For example, in Bhakti Yoga, many times we hear teachers of Bhakti, they say, why do you need to analyze it too much? Just chant, open your heart, develop love towards God. That's all you need. The more the mind works, the more problems you have. Don't bother about it. And within Bhakti Yoga, it is true. It is not that we condemn it. We don't say it is not true. But in our tradition of Advaita Vedanta, of Jnana Yoga, the yoga of wisdom, intellectual understanding is very important. It is not the goal. It is not the aim. But it is an important stage, important thing that we have to achieve on the way to realization. They call it Paroksha Jnana versus Aparoksha Jnana. Paroksha Jnana means indirect knowledge. Knowledge which is not direct. When now we are discussing, we are gaining Paroksha Jnana. We are gaining indirect knowledge because we are able to understand, at least to some extent, many aspects of that which is transcending everything, which is beyond the mind and beyond all understanding. But it gives us a good basis that can give us the direction towards that. With that, we have to continue. We have, with that, the way we do it in Vedanta is divided into three. First, there is Shravana. Shravana means we have to listen to the teachings. And then the second stage is called Manana. Manana is contemplation. You heard the teachings, now you go to your room. You should not just forget all about what we discussed. Oh, it was so nice. That's it. No, you have to think about it. Really, you have to think about it. You have to go on and try to understand and analyze and try to ask questions and see if you can answer them. If not, you can ask a teacher about your difficulties. And we have to contemplate constantly about this. This is called Manana. And then we need to go beyond Manana into another stage which is called Nididhyasana. Nididhyasana is a deep meditation over it. When the mind is exhausted, when the intellect is exhausted in thinking over it, there is an opening and we plunge into deep meditation of this truth. Now this is the time that intuitive knowledge manifests. This is the time that one really plunges into the innermost recesses of the self, and the truths are manifesting in a non-intellectual way, in a direct way, in an intuitive way. This is called Nididhyasana. This is the three stages: Shravana, listening; Manana, contemplation; Nididhyasana, meditation or deep meditation over it. These are the three stages that ultimately lead from Paroksha Jnana, indirect knowledge, into Aparoksha Anubhuti, into a direct experiential knowledge. Okay? So, therefore, it is this study in our tradition is considered to be very important. Yeah, we have time. Saya akasham brahmeti upaste akashavato vaisa lokan prakashavato asambadhanu anurugyavato abhisidhyati yavatakashyasya gatam tatrasya yata kamacharo bhavati ya akasham brahmeti upaste asti bhagava akashad bhuya iti akashadvava bhuyo asti iti tanme bhagavan bravitu iti dvadasha khandaha. This is the end of the 12th khanda, of the 12th section. Sanat Kumara says, Saya akasham brahmeti upaste. That person who worships Brahman as akasha, as space. Akashavato vai salokan prakashavato asambadha anurugyavato abhisidhyati. Such a person, abhisidhyati, he attains lokan, these worlds, which are prakashavataha, which are shining, and also akashavataha, which are very spacious, like space. Akashavataha means like akasha. They are very vast and space. And they are prakashavataha, they are shining, and also asambadhaha. They are, I don't know what is, let me see. Anurugyavata. Extensive. Okay? They are vast and extensive. And so free from hindrances. Okay. Asambadhan means they are free from all hindrances. Space have no any limitations. You cannot, you see, we just have seen that this cup cannot limit space. It's not breaking space. So there are no any hindrances, any blockages that block space. You cannot have anything that will put some block in space and block space in any way. It's not possible. This way, he says a person who worships Brahman as Akasha, he gets over all difficulties and he has no hindrances. Nothing blocks his way. Okay? And again he says as usual, Yavat akashasya gatam tatrasya yata kamacharo bhavati. That person who worships Brahman as Akasha can go as far as Akasha can go, as much as he likes. Ya akasham brahmeti upaste. Asti bhagava akashad bhuya iti. Sir, is there anything which is superior to Akasha? Akashad vava bhuya asti iti. Of course, there is something which is superior to Akasha. Tanme bhagavan bravitu iti. Sir, please tell me, what is superior to Akasha? Iti dvadasha khandaha. That's the end of the 12th chapter section. Now we go to section 13. Smaro vavakashad bhuyaha tasmat yadyapi bhava asiran na smarato na evate kanchana shrinuyuhu na manviran na vijaniran yada vavate smareyuhu ata shrinuyuhu Ata manviran, ata vijaniran, smarena vai putran vijanati, smarena pashun, smaramupasveti. After Akasha, Sanat Kumara says, smaraha vava akashad bhuyaha. That which is superior to Akasha is smaraha. What is smaraha? Memory. Memory is superior to Akasha. Now we are going back into the mind. You remember at the beginning, we started with the name, and then speech, and then the mind itself, manas, and then we had sankalpa, and all these things are related to the mind. But then at some point we went into the element, we went away into external things. We had food, first strength was some kind of in the border, and then food and water and fire and space are all external things. And now we are coming back into the mind. It says smaraha, memory. Memory is superior to akasha. Why? Yadyapi, tasmat yadyapi bahava asiran nas marantaha. If many people gather together and they have no memory, just try to imagine that all of us here, suddenly we don't have any type of memory. We don't remember anything. Sometimes it happens to me. Naivate kanchana shrinuyuhu, na manviran, na vijaniran. These people then, because they have no memory at all, they cannot hear anything, they cannot think about anything, and they cannot know anything. Without memory, nothing works. You know, my grandmother passed away last year. She was 99 years old. And in the last 2 or 3 years of her life, she slowly started to lose the short-term memory. You know, we have in our brain, we have short-term memory and long-term memory. And they have different functions. She started losing the short-term memory. At the end, it was practically not there. So it became very interesting. You come to visit her, and every 30 seconds, she's so surprised to see you. She's so happy to see you, like 50 times in one visit. And she asks you the same questions again and again and again. And she was very funny lady, very sweet and very funny. So it was, to come to her, even in this state, it was always so nice. She's asking the same question again and again and again. So it is sad a little bit to see. It doesn't matter. The point here is that when there's no memory whatsoever, not even a short memory, nothing can function. Now, and then he says, Ata, yes. Okay. Yada vava te smareyuhu, and if these people do remember, if their memory is working, Ata shrinuyuhu, Ata manviran, Ata vijaniran, then they can listen, they can hear, they can think, and they can know things, just because they have memory. Therefore, smarena vai putran vijanati, smarena pashun. So a person can know his own children only because he has memory. And my grandmother, sorry for bringing my family into this, but she will ask, to whom do you belong? Like, who is your parents? And she will always make confusions, and it will be and she will see my mother, and she will ask, who are you? She will not recognize anybody, because memory was not there. So he says, when a person does have memory, therefore such a person, putran vijanati, he knows his children, smarena pashun, and he remembers his, pashun means animal, cattle. In those days, that was equal to wealth. People know what he has. He knows his belongings. That's the idea here. Such a person can function in this world because he has memory. Without memory, it is impossible to function. Therefore, he says, smaram upasveti. Now, we have to discuss about memory. It is a very, very interesting topic. We have to understand how memory functions in the mind and has to do with thought and the power of thoughts, and all this discussion we will have tomorrow. Okay? So now we will have a short silent meditation for just a minute or two, and then we will conclude. Asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityorma mritam gamaya. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Freedom Freedom Freedom. Om Bolo Shri Sadgurudev Swami Shivananda Maharaj Ki Jai. Shri Sadgurudev Swami Shivananda Maharaj Ki Jai. Om Namah Shivaya. That's it. Thank you.